This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Mike Johnson says God will punish depraved U.S. because more teens identify as LGBTQ+. New House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican out of Louisiana, recently told his email subscribers that the United States has a depraved culture because more teens are identifying as LGBTQ+. He shared recently one email with his subscribers with an image header labeling the message as National Republican Congressional Committee, NRCC, News Alert. He expressed his worries that the American culture has fallen deeply since the United States founding in 1776, and he fears the country may be now beyond redemption and hanging by a thread. He mentioned about 1 in 4 high school students identifying as something other than straight, referencing a recent CDC statistic. However, Johnson may not realize that the reason why more youth identified as non-heterosexual in the CDC's 2021 Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System survey was because it changed its questions on sexual identity. This survey has been updated several times since its first use in 1990. It now asks 2 new questions of students to describe their sexual identities. Quote, I am not sure about my sexual identity, questioning, end quote. Or, I describe my sexual identity in some other way, end quote. Nevertheless, his email is just the latest example of his extensive anti-LGBTQ+ Christian nationalistic rhetoric. Johnson was elected by the GOP House caucus without an extensive review and vetting process of his past. Johnson's rhetoric is setting him on a path to become the most vocal anti-LGBTQ+ House Speaker in U.S. history. Yeah, okay. So, it seems to me that, yeah, he continues to target and continues to target and continues to target. I maybe think Mike Johnson needs to take a long, hard look at himself and why he continues to target LGBTQ+ people. That's just a suggestion. I might suggest that Johnson find Sunshine Cathedral. I might suggest that he come and check out our worship services and take a long, hard look because he just keeps targeting these same vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And that is the last thing that LGBTQ+ youth need is to be targeted by somebody in power.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a bully.
He's a bully.
And we do know that the people who obsess most about sexual minorities tend to be closeted members of those minorities.
Thank you.
Maybe so.
And so for him to be pointing that finger at gays so much, I feel like there's 3 pointing back at him. It's
think
just
about.
It's a little too focused for it to be for it to not be personal for him somehow.
Yeah.
I also it's so inappropriate. It's so wrong. He should be brought up on charges already. He should be impeached.
Yes.
Because the judgment that he's making, there's somehow something wrong with 1/4 of all students being non-straight. First of all, if it could be 90%, or who cares? Because his judgment is not based on science. His judgment is not based on lived experience, and his judgment is not based on the U.S. Constitution. So he doesn't get to say that there's anything wrong with any number of people being non-straight. And he's certainly not in his position as the 3rd highest office in our country.
Correct.
Scares me.
You know, if the president goes, the vice president's next. If she goes, he's next. He's the 3rd most senior person in our entire government, and it is inappropriate and it is inexcusable for someone with that much power to target a group of citizens and declare them to be somehow problematic when his findings are not based on science or his own admitted lived experience or on the U.S. Constitution, which he has sworn to protect and uphold. So I don't care what little pamphlet he's got or what his little Sunday school said, I don't care. I absolutely do not care. Or I don't care that back, when he was a kid, everyone he knew, said mean things about queers. I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I care that the 3rd highest ranking person in the U.S. government is targeting U.S. citizens for who they are, when there's not a thing in the world, in reality, in anything that's evidence-based, to suggest there's anything wrong with being who they are. So PS that, but also these numbers have been floating around since the 40s, and this particular set of since the 90s.
90s.
Right.
Yeah.
But the 10% we used to say, oh, 10%, okay. Well, it's never been quite 10%. What the Kinsey study showed is that 10% of people had a same gender sexual experience. That 10% had at least experimented, and that included things like and straight people do this all the time, but they don't identify, that included the circle jerk.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so 10% of people had, well, in the circle jerk, it's a sexual experience and they're all boys. So that is a same sex experience. So deal with it for 2 minutes. But the 10% had such experience. Only about 6%, 6 or 7%, continued to identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual throughout their life. So it's still a significant number.
Right.
And then they want to reduce that to 1% or 2%, and we're protecting all these people for only 1 or 2%. Well, if we're so few and so insignificant, leave us the fuck alone.
There you go.
And how many does it take to be significant? Because about 1% of the country is Native American. I mean, how many people does it take for you to be people? And P.S., about 1 to 2%, we know, now when people can come out, maybe it's more, I hope it is, but about 1 to 2% do identify as trans. That seems to be a big enough number for them to come after them hard and heavy. So they want it both ways. You're so few, you don't matter, but you're so many, we gotta put you in a box. No, absolutely not. So 1%, 6%, 10%, 25%, that you're not straight. That sounds right to me. Between the pansexual and the bisexual, the questioning and the lesbian and the gay and the asexual and all that together, I don't have any trouble believing that's 0.25%. But what I know is that's 25% of human beings.
Yay.
Yeah.
Those are 25% of citizens and residents of this country. Those are 25% of people who are guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so those are 25% of people who get to be whatever the hell they are. And he needs to shut up.
And my only thought about all of that for him is you have all this position of power.
Right.
And is this the issue that you are willing to fall on that sword for? Because this is not a redemptive thing. Offices holders to me are about protecting, preserving, and ensuring everyone has the rights and their rights are protected. And to me, this is once again, this particular group of folks who are misleading and misguiding and telling folks what they think is a fearful thing that's out there.
Yeah.
And we have to eradicate this. We have to get this out. It's just misleading. What are the real issues y'all are avoiding?
Yeah.
What are the real issues you don't want to deal with around your circle? And when you are there together, ethical, morality issues. I mean, violations. Like, really, come on, folks, get to your real issues that you need to deal with before you just be afraid of the other. Be afraid of the other. No, I'm afraid of you.
Yeah.
Diversion.
No, I'm afraid of you.
It's diverting.
You're the one with the power.
Well, it is a diversion because as long as we are arguing about this and taking up time on the House and Senate floor with this and taking up times in the courts with this and
It's a distraction.
as long as we're doing all that, we're not fixing bridges.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not doing all that. We're not raising minimum wage. As long as we're doing all that, we are not cleaning up the environment.
We're not paying our teachers.
Yeah. So as long as we can just keep people all head up about, those mean monster fairy people or whatever, then they don't have to spend money on making a difference in the world. They don't have to hold the military accountable. They don't have to work on peace treaties. They don't have to make billionaires pay their share so we can get those bridges and clean up the environment, whatever.
Right.
So as long as they're making you hate queers, the bridges can crumble and Scrooge McDuck gets to line his pockets. That's the thing.
I always look at these times in our history and wonder, why don't our politicians pay attention to history? There has never been a time where a person who was oppressing a group of people ever looked good in the history books.
Yeah.
Most recently was, not most recently, but most evident to me was the trials in Congress about communists. There was a witch hunt that was unbelievable. And then we can keep going back. We can do Dred Scott. We can do the Civil War. We can do what we did to Native Americans and see that history looks at it and says, my goodness, how disgusting can you be? And this guy is just too proud of being anti-queer that I go back to I think maybe she protests just a little too much.
Too much.
A little too much. There's also the thing, though, that we don't have to go back so far. It's just been a few weeks that a poor woman in Texas,
Yeah.
whose life and possible future fertility depended on her getting a medical procedure, that the Attorney General of that state personally kept her from getting. She had to leave the state before she ran out of time to take care of her health. That she had an unviable pregnancy.
Yes.
And if she didn't get it medically corrected, she might die, and she would probably not be able to get pregnant again if she survived. And because people think I can decide for your bodies, your lives, your loves, make your choices for you, this woman could have died,
Yes.
or her family choices be taken away from her in the future. This. That's not in the 50s.
No.
That's not in the 1800s. That is recently that a citizen of this country, a full-grown woman, had to leave her state to get medical care because people in charge said she couldn't make that kind of choice for her own life. So if you think, oh, well, I'm not queer, I'm not trans, this isn't about me, you need to look around, because everything's about everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And let me put a period on what you were just talking about. The Texas Supreme Court actually supported the Attorney General in that decision, saying that the doctors had not provided enough information for them to determine. Hey, it wasn't for you to determine in the first friggin' place.
That.
Here's the information
How dare
you need.
you?
Yeah, here's the information you need. She wants to have an abortion. That's the information you need.
Yeah.
At the end of the story.
It's her body.
And the second part of that is, we talk about it at this table very often. People have got to get their asses out and vote. There is no other way that we are going to control the narrative if we don't control our representatives.
Right.
And I say representatives because they're not a leader of mine.
Nope.
Go out there and vote for dog catcher, vote for council person, vote for congressperson, for senator, for governor, and damn it, definitely vote for president.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you vote every chance you get.
And every senator that you hate, and every governor that you hate, and every president you hate, they didn't start out that way. Well, except for Trump, he never did anything. And he became president.
About that.
But usually they start locally.
Yeah.
So today's school board member could be tomorrow's governor.
Yes.
So don't take it for granted.
But the Trump
That governor wouldn't have got there if they had been stopped early.
was Trump on the school board?
He never held
Never.
a position.
I just want to make clear.
You know, they've always been like a general or college president
Right.
or a state
They've held
politician.
Leadership
office
type
before.
positions. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we are excited to tell you about our next adventure with our Global Fellowship. In 2024, we'll be going where the hills are alive as we explore Austria and Alpine Europe for Gay Oktoberfest. Space is extremely limited, so make sure to go to happeningout.travel/sunshine to reserve your space now.